Three, two, one, action. Welcome back to episode 7 of As Seen on Screen. I'm Gracie.
And I'm Nicole, and this is your source for entertainment news, reviews, interviews, conversations, and so much more.
Find us wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts on Spotify and YouTube.
So let's get into it. We have an exciting episode today. We're particularly excited because we have our first interview and guest on the podcast this week. So we're going to get into that in a bit, but we'll just give you a sneak peek of what we're talking about after the interview. We have some news coming from Broadway, from IMAX theaters and Twisters, Taylor Swift and her Eras tour. A little sad for some fans, but we'll get into that. And another Amazon MGM production with one of our favorite actors at the moment. So we'll get into all of that. But first, let's get into our interview with Jordan. Amazing. So thank you again for being here with us today. I just wanted to jump in first to get a bit of background for what you're doing right now with your jobs and your careers. You currently work with Nickelodeon, Pop Culture Planet, the Cherry Picks. So what does your day-to-day work life look like right now and what you're doing with those companies?
Yeah, of course. So, full time, I am a social media coordinator at Nickelodeon. That's my primary job, my primary means of surviving and making money. I work on Nick Jr. social marketing campaigns. So, Paw Patrol, Dora, Blue's Clues, Peppa Pig, all of those kinds of titles across linear streaming and theatrical releases. So, that's really fun. I get to kind of touch a lot of different parts of the industry that way. And then in what other extra free time I have, I do freelance journalism for Pop Culture Planet. It's an independent outlet. It's a team of all women, which is really exciting. We all kind of work together and cover different things. Some of that is writing reviews, some of it is interviews, different things like that. And then I just do kind of whenever I have free time and whenever the opportunity arises. And then with Cherry Picks, it's also a female-led, female-focused outlet, but essentially I just take the reviews and things that I write on Pop Culture Planet and put them on Cherry Picks. So it's kind of like a Rotten Tomatoes type of thing, but only women. So it's just another place for people to be able to find me and read my stuff, and get a female perspective on film and TV.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think in this industry too, it's so important to do like a variety of different outlets with like journalism and social media, just because it's constantly changing. So that's so great that you're involved in so many aspects of it.
Yeah.
But 2024 has certainly been a year of film festivals for you, which has been so exciting, I'm sure. I wanted to dive in and talk a bit about Cannes first. So many aspects to talk about there, but how was your overall experience at the festival for yourself?
I loved it. I went with a friend that I had actually never met in person before. So it was a little bit of a scary experience. I'd also never been to Europe. I'd never been to France, don't know a single word in French. So I was very nervous and a little hesitant, but I was kind of like, when else am I going to have the opportunity to do that?
Yeah.
So applied for a press credential, got it, ended up going. I met some very lovely, lovely people there. Um, and I would say out of all the film festivals I've gone to, it was by far the easiest to get tickets to the screenings that I wanted to go to. I saw every movie that I wanted to see, got to meet other press people that I've known through like social media and stuff that I just never had the opportunity to meet in person. The food was amazing, as I'm sure you could guess, and it's on the water in the south of France. Like, how much better does that get?
How could you have a bad time doing that at all?
Exactly.
So talking about like getting tickets and things, how was it navigating the festival for presses when once you got there? Was it easy to get around, try to find things? How was it set up? What was it like for you that way?
Yeah, there's one building that's kind of the hub for everything called the Place. And that's where I think almost all but one theater is in. So in terms of like transportation stuff is pretty easy if you just get down to that one building. It's not far to get to anything you want to go to. You just check in, pick up your badge, kind of like every other film festival, and then as far as getting tickets to things, they actually do an online ticketing system, which was insanely helpful. So the online ticketing system would open 7 days prior to the ticketed date. So say the first day of the festival is like Monday the 20th, then tickets for that day would open on Monday the 13th. It would open at 7 a.m. time in Cannes, which meant I was staying up until 2 a.m. every night refreshing, trying to get tickets, which was a little
Gosh.
bit of a battle. But it was nice to be able to know ahead of time, like, okay, I'm locked in and I know I'm gonna go see XYZ. And then even once you're there, things open up. If the main titles and the premieres for each day happen at 7 p.m. And then the next screening would be the next morning at 8:30 a.m. for that movie. And then there would be a couple more screenings for it throughout the week. So if people got into the earlier screenings, for whatever reason, if they're waiting in line and people didn't show up, so then their tickets for later in the week would become available. So it was far easier to kind of get into things, and especially they had press only screenings. So there were a few movies that I got to go to press only ones. And some of those happened before the world premieres, which was wild. So I got to see Kinds of Kindness and Megalopolis at 4 o'clock, and it didn't premiere until 7 p.m. So we were kind of the first group of people to see those films, which I feel like nowadays it's so rare to go into a movie completely blindly, just with social media and word of mouth. It feels like, things are kind of spoiled in those movies. Like some of them didn't even have trailers out yet. So you're really going in with no opinion. So I thought that was really fun and interesting to do.
Yeah. I love that about film festivals. I think it's like, especially with trailers these days, they kind of sometimes give everything away. So
Mhm.
sometimes being able to go in that way is nice. But I saw on your Instagram you're going to some pretty early screenings. What was the earliest movie start time that you had at the festival?
I saw Furiosa at 8:30 in the morning. So that was the earliest. I think that's the earliest possible one they do. But of course, that's because it premiered the night before at 7 p.m. So that 8:30 slot was like the next possible time you could see it. So, I mean, it was a packed theater, which you would never expect anywhere else for an 8:30 movie screening. But it was definitely a way to wake up in the morning. I'll say that much.
That's a wake-up call for sure.
Yeah.
What was your highlight of the festival? What was your favorite moment, maybe moments that you took away from your experience there?
I think just meeting so many people interested in the same thing with different backgrounds. There's a like rooftop press area where you have to have a press credential to get in. And someone I had met at a screening that I knew through like Instagram was like, "Oh, have you gone up there?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know that was a thing." So he brought me up there and he was like, "Oh, these are my friends so and so and so and so." And I met this guy who lives in London and goes to premieres all the time. And then some girl who's from France was chatting with us about movies. And then her friend who's this guy from Germany came up to us and we're all like talking about these movies and things. It's just so funny. Like I had never been to like a truly international film festival in that aspect of like there really are people from everywhere here.
Yeah.
And then even people from, the US, like New York. The friend that I went with was from New York. And there were a couple girls that I knew through social media and had kind of like DM'd with and chatted with before, but never met in person. And we met up and we kind of became this little group of four and we would split up and do things separately. And it was just nice. And now like they all still live in New York and hang out all the time. So it's nice because those connections really do last. And it's just great that you can meet in such a place where like if the conversation dies, just bring up a movie because everyone's gonna have a thought on it. Like it's an easy conversation starter.
It's so true. That's such a great thing about film festivals. I mean, that's how Gracie and I met last year too at the Toronto International Film Festival. So I think it's so cool that you have that outlet that you don't maybe necessarily realize you're going to have until you get there. And then it's so cool to make those connections.
Definitely.
Yeah, the next thing I want to dive in, I'm so curious to hear some of your thoughts on some of the films that you saw while you were there, if you don't mind sharing some of them. I wanted to start off with talking about Megalopolis. What your thoughts on or that one? Because I've heard some mixed things in the media, so I want to see what you thought.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting one. That was one, again, went in completely blindly. I mean, that movie, I think, released like a teaser maybe the day or two before it premiered. But other than that, there was really nothing out there about it other than the fact that like Francis Ford Coppola self-funded it. It had been in the works for like 40 years,
Yeah.
but didn't really know like what the story was, what the movie really was going to be. And that was one we saw before the premiere, and I was sitting next to my friend. It was like the second movie we saw together. And I was a little like at a loss for words. I'm gonna be honest. Like, it was just odd to me. I think I came out of that movie really being like, I don't know what the goal was. Like, I don't know what kind of his angle was for this. I thought a lot of the scenes, which were like green screen, looked very cheap and not well done. My friend literally asked me after, she was like, was that a finished movie? Because apparently, years and years before, he had premiered Apocalypse Now at Cannes, but it was an unfinished version. So she
Ah,
was like, you think it's the same thing? And I was like, no, I think it's done. It was just not great. And like the dialogue and the writing was just weird. It would go from, normal now, like American English, to then quoting poets and philosophers. And then there's a moment where he's speaking Latin. And then at one point, a guy literally walks on stage with a mic and like asks the screen a question. It was odd. It was odd. I don't think it's gonna have mass appeal. I think it's gonna have its limited run and it'll be something that's talked about and a bit divisive. I think that happens anytime a big director kind of does their own project. I mean, it was all him. It was his money, it was his idea, it was his kind of passion project. And if that's what he wants to do with his money and that's what he wants to make, then like so be it. Who am I to say like he shouldn't do that? But I don't think it's one I'll be revisiting.
no, not a second watch one.
No.
I was gonna ask you to, you just mentioned it, but so did you actually have that person come out when Adam Driver's scene was on and ask him questions in your screening as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I did steal a picture, which I probably like was not supposed to do, but I was like, if I explain this to someone, they're gonna be like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I need picture proof to like actually explain. Like, yes, this man fully walked on stage with a mic stand.
That's so weird. I was just talking about this with someone the other day at my work, and I'm like, what are they gonna do when this actually releases in theaters? Like, you can't, like, are you really gonna have a movie theater employee come out and do that? No, probably not.
I don't think it really did anything for the scene or for the film. Like it just seemed like something to do to be like different.
Yeah.
I think it could have just been executed on screen. I don't think it needed to be that like meta kind of thing. I don't know.
Like, fourth wall broken. That's just so strange.
Yeah, it was odd.
But another one I wanted to hear your thoughts on too were Kinds of Kindness, because that's coming out soon in the next few weeks. So what do you think about that one? That's another one I've heard quite a few mixed thoughts on.
I mean, I think the dark comedy genre like that is not for everyone. Um, I heard a lot of people saying that it was more comparative to Yorgos Lanthimos' earlier work, not so much Poor Things, which was his most recent success with Emma Stone. Um, and another thing I didn't know beforehand, it was like an anthology, so it is like almost 3 hours long, but it's really three separate stories
Oh,
just kind of packaged in a movie kind of thing. Because each story, it still had the same cast in each one, but it was three totally separate storylines that had like end credits and then okay, a new one begins. I will say Jesse Plemons 100% deserved that Best Actor award at Cannes. I think he was incredible in this. I don't think he's gotten some of the recognition he deserves, especially someone like I first saw him in Friday Night Lights. Like that is how I learned of him, and he's come a very long way since then. But I think it's the same with most things in that genre. I kind of came out of it and I was like, oh, I don't think I liked that. And then I sat with it a little bit longer and I was like, well, did I? Like I did feel a little weird watching it, and some of the themes are very dark, which I think he is always drawn to. But then it was also a fun conversation afterwards, talking with all the people who saw it. And we were like, okay, which of the three was your favorite? Because I think that will stir up a lot of conversation of, the anthology style and it being a little bit different than just a straightforward film. But again, like some of the storylines, I was like, what is happening? It's one of those things that just feels a little off the entire time.
right.
But I was intrigued all the way through. I wasn't like during Megalopolis, I was like looking at my watch, being like, okay, how much longer is this? During Kinds of Kindness, I was not doing that. So I think that's also a testament to like how good a film is like, especially now with such short attention spans, is like if I'm sitting there locked in the entire time, I think that's a win.
Absolutely. That's always my thing. If I'm sitting in a movie theater and I'm like, what time is it? And like, I'm clearly not enjoying this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about Amelia Perez? I know you saw that one. What did you think of that film?
Yeah, that was, I'd say, a surprise for me. I didn't know it had a musical aspect to it before I went in. And I'm someone who's like pretty open to like musicals. Big Mamma Mia fan. I'm a big Broadway person. Like I won't sit and listen to like Broadway soundtracks, but I'll definitely go see a musical. And I think it was a very different and unique. I think Zoe Saldana was amazing in it. The four main actresses in the film collectively won Best Actress for the entire festival, which I think that is also a testament to like how incredible that film was. I think it pushed a lot of boundaries. I think it took a lot of risks. Some of the musical numbers we were kind of like, ooh, like, is this funny? Is it just weird? Like, I think I think a lot of the movies that premiered there, they're not the ones that everyone's gravitating towards. And I think that's typical of a film festival like that. Is they're made for certain audiences. It's a director taking a creative vision and bringing it to life. It's not necessarily like your blockbuster hit that everyone's going to want to go and see. But I think for a musical to have kind of like a darker kind of undertone, and I think it's also refreshing to see a different kind of transgender story on screen than what's kind of been brought to life before. I think that was very interesting. Um, I think Selena Gomez was incredible in it. And it's also mostly in Spanish. So that was another wild thing was like, we're in France watching a movie in Spanish. I speak English. So there's like dual subtitles happening. It was a lot to kind of like take in. But I think that was one that I was pleasantly surprised in. There was a few moments where I was like, whoa, okay, that happened. I enjoyed it probably more than I really expected to be honest.
That was a good point you brought up too. When I saw the lineup for Cannes, I was so surprised to see Furiosa on there, only because it just seemed so out of place with everything else. Because it's true, a lot of the movies that always premiere at Cannes, they're very niche almost in the audience that you're gonna have when they have a full release. So it's always strange to navigate that. But the
Yeah.
last one I'll ask you about, I have to ask as a Canadian, how was Oh Canada? What did you think about that one?
Honestly, didn't love it.
Yeah,
That
no.
was one that I was sitting through and I was like checking the time. And actually my friend who I went with fell asleep during it. Whether that was just fatigue from like being in a theater for 8 hours a day,
Yeah.
it happens. It happens. Like people are trying to see as much as they want to see. I've read the log line. There was no reviews, there was no trailer, there was nothing beforehand. And it was kind of one of those dual timeline type of movies. Um, and it's kind of this older man reflecting on his life and his decisions, and he's, sick. And so he's kind of giving this testimonial about his life and documenting kind of his past and how he got to where he was. But he's also sick. And so it's kind of like, is he telling the truth? Is he not? Is he purposefully lying? Is it just, his sickness playing games with him? Is he misremembering? But for a movie called Oh Canada, they did not say a peep about Canada until literally the last 2 minutes. So if you're looking for a film about Canada, I wouldn't say that's like the number one to go for. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be like a selling point for it so much. But it's also based on a book and they changed the name. I can't recall. And I mean, Jacob Elordi was in it, Richard Gere was in it, Uma Thurman was in it. And I thought they were all fine. Like I thought it was a fine movie, but like nothing about it really stood out to me.
That happens though. I mean, you're never gonna have a million films you come out of film festival loving, so you always have to
Yeah,
have the ones that are less on there.
definitely.
But switching gears a bit, you just wrapped up your time at Tribeca Film Festival as well. So, what was your team's approach to covering that film festival for you guys? What were there interviews you were really crossing your fingers for, carpets? What was the goal for that one for you guys?
Yeah, so that was a unique experience because for Kin and for South by, it was just me and a friend who went. So we were the only two covering the entire festival. But with Tribeca, our entire team pretty much is based in New York. So we had an opportunity there to kind of see a little more, cover a little more, and really focus on the things we wanted to see. Um, so that was fun. A lot of it just came down to availability. I was like, I can only do the first weekend. Um, so it was kind of looking at that, looking at what's on the roster, who do I want to see, what titles intrigue me. I will say out of all three of the film festivals, I think it was the most difficult for me to in terms of access, in terms of just getting approved for things. And everything's very far apart for Tribeca. Didn't expect that either. Um, we were really hoping to get into Sacramento for the red carpet and the premiere, which we did, which was very fun. However, Michael Cera did not stop to speak with us, which was sad, but did get to see him in the flesh, so that was fun.
Yeah.
Um, And we got to interview the whole cast that was there. And Michael Angarano, who wrote, directed, and starred in the film, was literally the sweetest human being you could ever meet in your entire life, was taking so much time to talk to every single press person on the carpet and really give them his full attention. And he'd been working on the film for over 7 years, so it was really like his baby. And I was introduced to him via Sky High when I was like a young kid in like 2006 or something. So I was like, I'm really excited for this. So that was really a fun one. And then we got to sit and watch that. I'm trying to think of what else. I got to go into a screening of Brats, which is about the Brat Pack, which was kind of like the young actors in Hollywood in the 80s. And they kind of really jump-started the focus and putting worth and stake in movies focused around like teens and coming of age, which I think now is like probably one of the biggest genres there is and gets like the most buzz. And I think that was really interesting because Andrew McCarthy, who is part of the Brat Pack, is the one who directed this and kind of reached out to all these people and interviewed them. I will say I was probably the youngest person in that room by at least 20 years. I know pretty much all of the actors, but obviously I wasn't growing up in the 80s like they were. But even after screening, he came out and answered some questions, which was really nice.
Cool.
Wasn't expecting that at all. Um, but that's the perks of a film festival in a city where a lot of the people who are working on those films live. So they have the availability to come to all those things. And then I got to do a junket and a red carpet for a country music documentary called Rebel Country, kind of about the modern evolution of country music and how it's kind of breaking out of its previous stereotypes. And I worked at a country music radio station when I first graduated college. So I'd met a lot of country artists. I knew a lot about the genre. So that was really fun. And I had met Breland, who's a singer at South by, because he made a cameo in Roadhouse. And then I got to interview him again for this. And it was very sweet. He remembered me and he was so nice and got to tease some new music he has coming out. He has a song on the Twister soundtrack with Shania Twain. So that was
Cool.
like a fun little tidbit. I was like, okay, you're really into the music in the film. I didn't expect that. So that was really, really fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That Twister soundtrack, I am so excited for that. It's packed with huge names.
Straight country, like all the way through, and big artists. I'm like, how did they get the budget for that?
You know, did they spend the like it was like Glenn Powell, the supporting cast, and music. That was their budget.
Yeah, Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones, and then the soundtrack. Literally, they're like blockbuster hit.
There you go. Perfect.
All you need.
Oh, but I'm glad you had a great time. That sounds awesome. For red carpets for yourself, I mean, obviously it's different when you're working with a team and maybe just one or two of you, but how do you prepare yourself for red carpets? Some journalists do it differently in terms of like preparing for questions and whatnot. So how do you get yourself ready to do red carpets?
I think the biggest thing is just research and knowing who you're talking to. Obviously, sometimes you show up to a carpet and there are people there that weren't on the list and you maybe don't know who they are. But we kind of have a general list of questions in case that happens. So, questions that any director could answer, any producer could answer, any cast member could answer. And so we always have those in our back pocket in case anything pops up. But typically we get given a list beforehand and we know who's going to be there. And so I think a big part of that is looking at, their past work, going on IMDb, going on Instagram. I mean, that's how we knew Michael Angarano had worked on Sacramento for 7 years, is because like 2 days before he posted on Instagram, it was like, oh, 7 years ago today was our first table read. And just seeing that and then being able to like bring that up in conversation. He was like, oh, like, oh yeah, it has been that long. He kind of had that recall and like that mutual respect of like, okay, you actually took the time to research and know like more about what you're asking about than just kind of asking generic questions, because it can be hard when you haven't seen the movie yet and all you have is, a 2-sentence synopsis to go on. So I'd say research is the biggest thing. And also just being flexible and listening to whoever you're interviewing, because sometimes they'll say something totally unexpected and then you're like, wait a second, like that brings up another thought, or I'll ask this. So I think also just having that flexibility too. Um, I think those are the biggest things. I still get super nervous for carpets, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just people working in this industry, all love movies, all love TV, like we're all here for the same reason. So I think kind of stripping away that bit of anxiety helps. Of like, we're all here for the same reasons. We love the same stuff. We're just
Yeah,
on different sides of it.
absolutely. I know last year when I did my first red carpets and stuff in Toronto at the film festival, there was nothing more scary than like that panicked IMDb search of that person that you didn't know was going to be there, and you're like, okay, what have they done before? And let's add their questions on. But yeah, red carpets are fun, but I always
Yeah.
get nervous too, still super nervous.
Yeah, I get that imposter syndrome too. And then I, at the Sacramento carpet, was looking at people to the left of me and they were on IMDb searching. So I'm like, we're all doing the same thing. Like, and even we were on the carpet and one of the publicists comes up to us and was like, so the composer is here. We didn't know he was coming, but if you want to talk to him, we were like, sure, why not? And sometimes when it's more casual like that, it's fun because it's like, we didn't know, we didn't prep, but we can just come up with some questions on the fly and
Yeah.
see what they want to talk about.
Yeah. It's always so funny when they're like, "Do you want to talk to them?" It's like, well, you don't want to say no. But then on the other hand, it's like, what am I gonna what am I gonna say to them?
I mean, sometimes it's just like, how'd you get involved with the film?
Yep.
That's the most generic question you could ask anyone, and they'll have an answer for it. And then hopefully through that answer, you can think of another question.
Spawns something to go off of for you.
Yeah, definitely.
But switching gears a little bit back to South by Southwest, that was your first film festival you worked as press, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Amazing. So over the past few months, how have you navigated kind of that new working landscape between traveling to new places alone that you haven't been to, working with people you haven't necessarily met in person? What has that turning point been like for you in just preparing yourself and working that?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a not a joke, but in January of this year, I was like, what if I went to a film festival? Like that seems like it would be fun. And now here I am having gone to three in like less than 6 months, which is crazy. Um, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like everyone that I've gone with, I've kind of vetted beforehand of like, okay, this is one of my freelance coworkers. We've texted every day for like 6 months. Like, I think we'll get along fine. If not, we can go to separate movies and just meet up at the hotel at night. But luckily, it's all worked out beautifully for both. I would say like the solo travel can be stressful sometimes. I've done it enough of like visiting friends who live in other states and stuff like that, where that doesn't stress me out as much. The international travel was a little bit spooky for me. I was like, whoa, this plane is huge. I'm gonna be on this for 8 hours. So that was wild. But I think once I'm there, I'm like totally fine. And like you get that excitement, that adrenaline rush. And then you're like, whatever I get into, I get into. Like, I'm just happy to be here, happy to talk to whoever I want. Like, it seems like this really daunting and big thing, even can. I was like, this is so scary. Like, this is huge. This is one of the biggest international film festivals. And then you're there and you're like, I got approved for press just like any of these other people. Like, I deserve to be here just as much as them. And I think it's also great because I have so many people who are so supportive of everything I've done. And it's kind of shocking to a lot of people in my life because I used to be like very quiet, very shy. And now they're like, you're traveling by yourself to these film festivals and talking to celebrities. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of happened. Um, but I think just saying like yes to everything that you can is the biggest thing. And like befriending people wherever you go. I think it was far easier at South by because there's no language barrier when you're in Cannes and almost everyone around you speaking French. There's not really an opportunity to cut in and be like, oh, I saw that movie too. I thought this. What did you think? So like that was a little bit harder, but when you're on red carpets and stuff and you're standing like 3 inches next to like the next person, you gotta like talk to them and build a little bit of rapport, and that helps you build connections. And then you see them at another red carpet, so then that kind of makes you feel a little more comfortable of like, okay, I have a friend here. So I think that's like the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was funny. Gracie and I talked a lot about after South by on red carpets. Everyone was just so nice, which
Mhm.
it was weird because in Toronto when we went, everyone was kind of very like territorial about everything, especially on carpets. No one wanted to give anyone space, and South by was the complete opposite of that, at least from what Gracie and I found, which was great, and it made it so much easier to talk to people and make those connections. So that's always nice, and it definitely makes it easier to do that as well.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a lot of like how the carpets are run, how much space you have. And I think South by was nice because it's like, okay, if you befriend the people next to you, then it's like, there's the people coming down the carpet are timed. Like they're not all coming at once. So it's like, I'm gonna step forward when we're interviewing, and then once we're done, we'll take a step back so you can move in and get your questions in. Like
Exactly.
I don't know. I think there's also this idea of like these movies are going to come out at some point. There's usually an opportunity for a virtual junket to speak with these people again. So it's like if you don't get to ask everything you want to ask, it's not the end of the world. Like
Exactly.
you're still there. You still get to see them. It's still a fun experience. But yeah, I agree. The community at South by was amazing.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you too about the Rachel Zegler moments you had at South by Southwest. Gracie and I thought it was the coolest thing ever when we were at South by. We saw you guys posting about it. How did you were in the Roadhouse after party, then you got to speak to her on the Y2K carpet. So what were those trying to find those opportunities like for you guys to get in there?
Yeah, I mean, that was a unique moment. Yeah, we had gone to the Roadhouse premiere and after party solely because I had befriended the social media manager that was running the campaign for it at Prime Video, and he was able to give me extra tickets, and I was like, this is amazing. So again, it's sometimes it's the people you don't expect. Like he was not press, he wasn't working like he was working the social for it, but not as a member of the press. Um, and so, we were just hanging out at the after party. We were so nervous to talk to like anyone. We were like, what's the protocol here? Like, we'd never been to an after party like that. I'm like, are we allowed to talk to people? Like, I don't know. I don't want to be rude. And my friend Danielle that I went with loves Rachel Zegler, like loved Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, was like, she was like, if we didn't know she was going to be there. She was only there because she's friends with Lucas Gage, who is in the Roadhouse movie. And so she was just there solely as a supporter. And then she was going to be there later in the week to promote Y2K. And we kind of spotted her. And my friend was like, is that Rachel Zegler? I'm like, that's definitely Rachel Zegler. And she was like, I have to go say hi. And I was like, go for it. Like, she's just standing there, I think, with her publicist. Like, there wasn't a huge group. No one else seemed to notice who she was or if she was there. So we just kind of went up, started chatting with her. I think it also helped, like, we're the same age. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's she's young. It's crazy. Um, and just got to like chatting with her like a normal human being and not having like the press woo-woo of it all. Um, and she was amazing. A couple other girls came over to take photos with her and we were like, okay, like nice speaking to you, bye bye, whatever. Took photos with those other girls, came back over to us, continued the conversation. It was so sweet. I think we talked to her for like 20 minutes. It was wild. Um, it was great, said bye, had a good night. And then we couldn't get into the Y2K premiere or the red carpet. We weren't approved for it. But they told us if we waited by the end of the red carpet, they might have extra tickets for us to get in. So we were like, okay, we'll just like sit, watch the red carpet and wait. And we were just kind of standing at the end of the carpet and her publicist walked by and was like, one question, everyone, do you have a question? And I was like, yeah, I have a question. I technically wasn't approved to be there. Like I was approved as press, but like we were not on the list for the carpet. And she like Rachel turned the corner and saw us and she was like, oh my God, my friends remembered both of our names, was so kind and so sweet, got to ask her a question. Um, she even like whispered in my ear after when it was coming out, which I don't think is announced yet. So we're gonna keep that under wraps. But yeah, she's just like genuinely a very, very kind person. And sometimes I think too, I'm like, how do these people like how come they remember me? And I'm like, we talked for 20 minutes the night before. If I talked to someone for 20 minutes the night before, I'd remember who they are, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes there's that like imposter syndrome of like how like they meet so many people. But she just genuinely seems like someone who's very kind and caring and notices that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was a very sweet moment. Was not expecting that.
That was the video was just so cute. The way she turns around, she's like, my friends. I thought that was so cute. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, those moments are so great sometimes too. Like you forget that celebrities sometimes are human just as much as you are, and those moments really humanize them in that way. And it's nice to see them be so down to earth sometimes in that sense, because other celebrities, aren't necessarily going to be like that. So it's nice to have those moments with people like that.
Definitely. And I think, yeah, like being younger females, there's just like that touch point of like, okay, we're here, we're doing the same thing. Cause there can be that imposter syndrome or that kind of like hierarchy of like, I'm in a room right now with Jake Gyllenhaal. Like, I'm sorry, I'm too scared to go up to him. That's not happening. But like Post Malone, far more approachable. Like that I can do. But yeah, like we're all just people. Like they get to do stuff on screen
Yeah.
and we're just behind the screen. I don't know. Like it's yeah, we're all just people.
Yeah.
It's not that that's what I always remind myself anytime I get super nervous about things.
Absolutely. And Post Malone that night was so funny too, because in the Roadhouse premiere when they came out on the stage after for the post screening and he's had a Bud Light in his hand and he's just walking and everyone's like talking. He's just standing there with his beer. I was like, that definitely fits the what you'd think he's like in person.
Oh yeah, we talked to him too, and he was hilarious. He was like, "Yeah, I filmed my scene in like one day. It was like a 14-hour day. It was horrible." Like, da da da. We're like, "Would you do it again?" And he was like, "Oh hell yeah!" Like, it's just so funny.
Oh my God. What was your favorite film from South by Southwest? Because we hadn't had a chance to talk about that, but what was your some of your favorites from that festival?
Ooh, I really liked Bob Trevino Likes It. I don't think it has distribution yet still. But it had Barbie Ferreira in it. We got to chat with her. We did the red carpet for that film. I think it was just a really endearing story and far more emotional than I expected. When the publicist was giving us tickets, she was like, "Pack your tissues," and my friend Danielle and I were like, "No, we're good. Like we don't really cry at movies." And there's one scene where they're like at an animal shelter with puppies and she's like holding this puppy and it's a really just like heartwarming moment and like the entire theater, self included, was like tears.
Oh,
I was like, "Oh my goodness." So excited for that one to hopefully get distribution and see the light of day. That was definitely a favorite. I mean, South by is interesting because it is a mix of types of films because there's like The Roadhouse, which is a Prime Video original movie made for Prime
right.
Video, was coming out like a week or two later. So the point of them being there was just like a press moment, a publicity moment, which is kind of similar to how Furiosa was at Cannes. Like it was not in competition at the film festival, it was just there as a premiere to create buzz, etc. So I'm trying to think of some of the more independent ones. I feel like it was such a blur. We saw so many things.
Oh, I know. And now too, with it being a few months ago, I'm like, I can't remember what I saw. I could tell you like three big ones, and then I'm like, what did I see?
Yeah. And now like I'm this year I'm trying to really buff up on like my movie knowledge. And so I'm attempting to watch the equivalent of a movie a day in total by the end of the year. I'm at like 150 right now, which is like, oh.
Yeah, perfect.
But now I'm like, did I watch that on the plane right there? Was that actually at the
Yeah.
festival? Did I watch this after? Like, I have no idea. Yeah, it all blends together.
Yeah. South by was great in the sense that they just had so many, like you said, just so many mixes of movies and stuff like that. There was so much to see to the point where like Gracie and I were planning our schedules and we're just like, there's no way we're gonna see everything we want to see. Like Bob Torino Likes It was one we really wanted to see and we just didn't get to it. But so
Mhm.
many like that. But it's hard. And especially too, because when they don't always get distribution and things like that, it's like, oh, had the chance to see it. And it's hard to like figure out which ones you should really prioritize in that sense too, sometimes thinking it that way. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely hard. And I think the fun thing about South by too is there are so many different kinds of movies, just even in terms of like genre. I will say Cannes was, I mean, there was a time difference. It was a lot of running around. Everything was very new. I didn't feel like entirely like super comfortable all the time. So I feel like it was exhausting, but also the types of movies that premiere there are typically very heavy and they're long. I think almost every movie I saw was like 2 to 3 hours long. Like there are no quick 90-minute films there.
Yeah.
And even if like a lot of them the content was heavy or even just like it took a lot of focus and brain power to like make sure you're comprehending everything that's happening in order to like really understand the film. Whereas like a comedy is not going to premiere at Cannes. Like that's just not their demo. That's not their thing. Whereas like South by, you could go from a comedy movie to a horror movie to like a streaming original to an indie movie without distribution. Like I think there's a little bit more variety in that sense.
It's I can't imagine that because film festivals are already, like you said, so exhausting. Like you're just constantly on the go. You're trying to get work done. You're trying to see movies. You're trying to do carpets. You're trying to get content out. I can't imagine having to sit through like 2.5 hour movie and then it's like, okay, let's do it again. But that must have been so tough. So props to you for doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it was a lot, but also you didn't really have to wait in line because you had your ticket ahead of time.
Great.
So
That's
that was a nice thing. It was like you can show up 15 minutes before the movie starts and just like hop in line and get a seat
yeah.
because you already had your ticket on your phone. Whereas like sometimes at South by you'd have to go and wait in line for like an hour before a film actually starts, and that's a lot of time wasted. So pros and cons.
That was one tough thing for us for sure for South by and just waiting in line for like all that time and things like that. It's like so many things are happening that you just want to get to all of them and it's like sitting in line for 2 hours. I'm like, there's so many other things to do.
Yeah. And at South by, some of the films too only had like one premiere, and that was it. I can because it's like all industry people in some sense. It's like there's a premiere, there's an 8:30 a.m. screening the next day, and then there's at least three more screenings throughout the week, if not more. So even if you don't get to see it the first day or the first time, you'll still get to see it while you're there. So that's also nice.
Yeah, I wish South by had done that too, because in Toronto they do the press and industry screenings too at like 8 in the morning, and I was like, I wish they had done that at South by for just a few of them too, just to make it easier so you're not like stressed about getting to the one screening of every film. But yeah,
For a lot of the ones at South by, it's just like a publicity kind of bump. It's like The Roadhouse, Immaculate, Monkey Man. Like, yeah, it was only like a week before they were actually coming out in theaters or on streaming. So it's like if you don't get into the premiere, you can watch it next week wherever, you know? So it was a little bit less pressure. Whereas it can, like, some of these films might not come out until November because a lot of them are kind of the more like award nominee type of movies where they want to kind of hit the award cycle, which is typically like November through early January. So
yeah. Well, that's everything I had to talk about today. I know you're busy, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you already giving me 40 minutes of your time. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. And talking about this was so fun. Love nerding out to all things movies. So it was great to be able to talk about this with you.
yeah, of course. Yeah. Hopefully maybe see each other at TIFF if I
Yeah,
go
that'd be awesome. Yeah.
in the fall. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay, well, we just want to give a huge thank you to Jordan again for joining us on the podcast, for giving us her time. It was great to talk to her, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening and learning from her as well.
I'm so sad I couldn't be there. I had
You
a
know,
doctor's appointment, but I love the interview. I love watching it, and I love you and Jordan. So thank you, Jordan, again. You're
and don't
amazing.
worry, we'll have many other interviews, so you will be there next time.
Yeah.
But into some more entertainment news. IMAX announced they are doing a special pre-screening of Twisters on July 17th at select cinemas, cineplexes across Ontario. It is going to include a live pre-show Q&A with some of the cast, including Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones, Anthony Ramos, and Lee Isaac Chung. So again, that is on Wednesday, July 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can get your tickets now on Cineplex website or app. They're only doing it at select theaters, like I said, so it's Vaughan and select locations across Toronto. So if you're close to any of those or want to see the Q&A, it's a great opportunity to see it before the film comes out as well.
I'm
I'm
so
excited.
excited for it. I know we've been waiting for this movie, and then the live Q&A at the start just makes it so much more exciting.
Yeah, I'm so, so, so excited. As soon as I saw it, I sent it to Gracie. I was like, we need to be there. It's not even an option. We're going to be there, actually.
For real. Yeah, I'm like trying to book time off work already, but it is what it is.
We love you, Twister.
Also, in movie news, we joked about this last week that Amazon has a favorite white boy of the month. But Nicholas Galitzine is back with Amazon for another film called Three Bags Full, a sheep detective movie. So with Amazon and MGM, some of the other casts includes Hugh Jackman, Emma Thompson, Nicholas Braun, Hung Chow, and more to come, obviously. But I just find it so funny that Nick is in this for Amazon again. He is staying booked and busy.
They love him. They said, we have you in one movie, we're gonna have you in every movie, actually.
For real.
But I love the name of this movie. Three Bags Full, a Sheep Detective movie. What is this? Like,
I don't know. Like it makes me giggle every time I say it, but the way it says a sheep detective movie at the end kind of makes me think that it's going to be a series, kind of
and
like Knives Out. So I'm interested to see what it is.
I know, right? Like,
For a second I was like, "Oh, is it like an animated movie where they're all sheep and detectives?"
oh my
But
God. That'd
from
be,
what we've seen from Nick posting, it seems to be live action. So
yeah. And he said in his post most recently, he said, currently having the best time filming with these very funny people. So clearly it's gonna be like a comedy-ish, maybe mystery, like detective, mystery
yeah,
thriller.
I'm excited to see it though.
I am too. anything. You know what? I love Emma Thompson. So anything with Emma Thompson and obviously Nicholas and Hugh
And
Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
It's a great cast.
Yeah, it is.
I'm laughing. I'm going through the comments on the post about it, and everyone's first one is, "Do you sleep, mate? Because you must be exhausted keeping Amazon streaming alive."
Literally.
And then someone else said, "Nicholas, are you not going to be dressed as a sheep in this film?"
I'm waiting for someone to ask him, like, are you being held captive by Amazon?
Please say yes or no.
Blink, like this comment, whether or not you're being held by Amazon, because we will come save you.
We will, and we promise. But in other news, that does not have to do with Nicholas, unfortunately, but it does have to do with Miss Taylor Swift. During her Edinburgh shows, one of her surprise songs was Crazier, which I feel like you have to be a pretty good fan of Taylor Swift to know that this is from the Hannah Montana movie back in, is it 08, 2008? Did that come
I
out?
think
Maybe.
so.
It could have been a little later. I'll look. But she sang, that was one of her surprise songs, and Gracie had some feelings about it. I got a text immediately.
I'm pretty sure I texted you something along the lines of, like, in all caps, crazier was my last straw.
Yeah. You're like,
And
did you say
I
out loud?
was devastated because I love this song. I like want it to be my wedding song when I get married, or like at least a part of the
Aw.
playlist that plays. So I was really hoping she like held out until Toronto, even though I'm not even going, but at least I would be like in the vicinity. But a bunch of fans were like, whoa, I didn't even know Crazier was like an option that she could play. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's her song. Why would she not? Like,
I think my dream surprise song would be, did you ever listen to, it was actually an unreleased song, so it's not on any of the albums, the song I'd Lie. It's
yeah.
when I was a kid, I just remember my dad like always burned CDs for us. And I don't know how he got that song, but he burned it onto one of the CDs that we listened to all the time in the car, my mom and I. I listened to
Mhm.
that song religiously as a child. I think when I got old enough to realize it wasn't even on an album, I was like, why not?
You're
I
like, what the heck?
I really hope it ends up on debut Taylor's version. I really hope. Either that or a surprise song, please, Taylor.
Yeah, honestly, I'm hoping Crazier gets a re-recording because that slaps. But
Right?
also, it's so funny because it's, as we said, it's on the Hannah Montana movie soundtrack. There have been rumors that debut Taylor's version is going to include You'll Always Find Your Way Back Home, but her
Oh,
version because she wrote it. And I'm so excited for it.
that would be so cool.
I'm like, that'd be so sad, but also so cool.
And also,
Like emotional sad.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I checked, it came out in 2009. The Hannah Montana movie.
Oh, you were a year off.
A year
Okay.
off.
Uh,
But yeah, so you know what? I feel like this gives fans hopes too for hearing like Christmas Tree Farm live, maybe in Toronto or Vancouver in November or December. I'm trying to think.
but yeah, this also, if she can play Crazier, a song that she like rarely even acknowledges,
Yeah.
she can play Mary's song. There's still hope for delusional people.
My one thing is I just want to hear something from Speak Now or Debut at the concert. That's my one.
Also, speaking of Taylor Swift, sorry, kind of off topic. It's been confirmed now that she is not starring in Deadpool and Wolverine
Yes.
as Dazzler. There was rumors because Swifties look into everything. I say this as someone who looks into everything. And the last lyric of her new album is dazzling. And people are like, oh my gosh, this means she's gonna be Dazzler and Wolverine and Deadpool, or Deadpool and Wolverine. And she was not, sadly, but I'm also like, they also said Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield weren't gonna be in No Way Home, and here we are.
Good
So
point.
I
Good
I
point.
choose to stay delusional.
Until July 26th, I believe that's when it comes out. We stay delusional.
Mhm. Yeah. Not only because I want to see her on the screen, but I think she does fit the character so well.
But speaking of music, what is your song of the week, Gracie?
I feel like all of my song of the weeks are like mainstream songs, and yours are like country. I don't know. I just pick the song that I listen to the most in a week, but I promise I listen to other music than mainstream music. That being said, Please, Please, Please by Sabrina Carpenter.
Great pick. Great pick.
Oh my God, did you watch the music video?
Yeah.
Okay, I love the comments where everybody's like, I didn't get what you saw in Barry, but
Until
now
now.
I get it. And I'm 100% on that team.
I
Like,
hear it everywhere. I feel like I can't escape it. Every time I go on TikTok, it's every other video. I'm like,
I
oh my
know.
gosh.
It's so catchy that I was literally at work the other day and it was just like three lyrics that were stuck in my head the entire shift. Going crazy by the end of it. But it's a good song. It's
It's a good
catchy.
song.
I'm pretty sure it's already surpassed Espresso, which is crazy. But yeah, Barry in that music video had me kicking my feet and giggling. But also the power of you to write a song being like telling your boyfriend like don't mess this up and then
Right?
having your boyfriend in the music video. Girl boss.
My favorite thing about this is on TikTok, everyone's like, girl, do you think this little Irish freak will embarrass you?
You're like, you think he won't? He drinks people's bath water.
And I love all the people posting TikToks like with their boyfriend and stuff, and they're like pointing at him, singing.
Yeah, they're like, don't embarrass me.
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, my song of the week is 28th of June by Megan Maroney. I
Wow, country.
I know. You're so right. I actually was trying to pick something not country just to throw you off this week, and I was like, I like the song too much.
Maybe next week.
There's always next week. I'll try next week, but probably not because Luke Combs is coming out with some new music, so
That's
probably.
true.
Um, so yeah, those are our two songs of the week. Both great picks. Love them. We have another musical news that Dolly Parton announced this past week. She has an original Broadway musical coming in 2026. So not anytime soon yet, but it's called Hello, I'm Dolly, and it's just basically about her life and coming up into her musical career. I think it'll be cool. I love Miss Dolly Parton, so I think it's
I
nice that
love
they're
Dolly
doing,
Parton. She's such an icon. She's just iconic. And I love that she's putting like her passion for theater and like film into her music as well.
yeah.
So I'm interested to see what happens. I feel like there's going to be a few original songs or something that haven't been released yet. I'm also curious just to see who they cast.
Right? Who's gonna be Miss?
Who is going to take on the role of Miss Dolly Parton
I would be intimidated. That would be intimidating
in
for
front
sure.
of Miss Dolly Parton?
Absolutely not.
Like, no.
I mean, Miss Dolly Parton is an icon. She has amusement parks named after her. She has Dollywood.
We should go.
I know. When my mom went to Tennessee a few years ago for work, and she went to Dollywood, and I was like, I am jealous, officially fully jealous, because I'm a huge amusement park person, and Dolly Parton, can't go wrong. But what, changing gears, what is your weekly watch for this week?
My watch of the week, I feel like I keep doing throwbacks that aren't like new releases, but that's all we got time for right now. So you get what you get. The Nice Guys with Ryan Gosling. Yeah, I was watching it the other night because you know when you just like scroll through Netflix and you're not sure what to watch and it shows you like these 5-second like little teasers.
Yep.
I was like, you know what? I do love a good Ryan Gosling movie. And I know he speaks so passionately about this and the fact that he thinks if it was released on a different date, there would be a second movie.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, you know what? I'll watch it. I'll see what the hype's about. And it was very funny. It was really
Yeah.
good. The chemistry between Ryan and all of his co-stars in this film was amazing. It was so weird seeing Angourie Rice, I believe that's her name, because I just watched her in Mean Girls.
Yeah.
And then I see like this little version of her. I'm like, wow, she's been at this. She's been killing it for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely funny to watch. Just I don't want to say a feel-good movie because it's kind of like depressing at points, but it's a funny movie, chill movie, got some good action sequences and lots of like dark, dirty humor.
Love it. Perfect.
What
Well,
was your watch of the week, Nicole?
I'm gonna stay on the Ryan Gosling train with you because I also was on Netflix the other day and the little trailers came up and I was like, oh, I'll watch this. So it's called Murder by Numbers. It's 2002. It stars Sandra Bullock, Ben Chaplin, Ryan Gosling, and Michael Pitt. To be fully honest, was not my favorite. It's a it's so Sandra Bullock plays the detective and Ryan Gosling and Michael Pitt are working together to cover up a murder and they're trying to outsmart the police and Sandra Bullock is much more driven than all the other detectives and so she feels strongly that those two are guilty. No one else really believes her, so it's kind of the whole movie is like her trying to uncover the crime and what happened. It was very slow. It like the plot development was very, very slow. It didn't happen like gradually. It just kind of happened more towards the end. So everything leading up to it was just very like, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but it was not my favorite. But if you like thrillers, mysteries, detective movies, that kind of stuff, still worth the watch. I mean, who doesn't love Sandra Bullock and Ryan Gosling? That was my watch of the week. I was going to say The Purge because staying on horror movies, love horror movies. I'd actually never seen the original Purge movie. So,
Really?
yeah, I hadn't. I'd seen
This was the original that you watched?
yeah, the very first one from 2013.
What did you think of it? I know it's like
I
one
liked
of
it.
the I feel like it's one of the boring purges, but
See,
it also like gives it context.
yeah, and I didn't even know Ethan Hawke was in it. And when he appeared, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah, surprise.
I thought I
I
liked
was
it."
last time I watched it, I was too young to know Ethan Hawke. I was just kind of like, who is this man? Why is he in trouble? But yeah, now that you say that, I'm putting two and two together. I'm like, wow.
But that was really good. I really enjoyed that one. So those were my two weekly watches this week. It's funny because it's when we're filming this right now, it's a Tuesday and we filmed the last episode on Friday, so it's only been a few days. So I'm like, what have I watched in the span of a
Literally.
few days?
I mean, in fairness, I watched like half of Anyone But You, but then I had to go to work and I never finished it.
You didn't see that in theaters or like you
No,
now?
no. I know. I like for someone who loves entertainment, I am the worst with seeing new movies because if I don't see it in theaters, I just kind of forget about it. And then it pops up on my feed one day and I'm like, oh yeah, I never saw that. So yeah, I started watching it, did not finish it.
What'd you
Uh,
think of it so far?
you know what? I don't know. I don't know if it was just like a slowish start for me,
Mhm.
but I just really feel like it was overhyped.
I didn't think it was like the greatest rom-com. I thought it was good
No, it was
and I enjoyed
definitely
it.
like cute and giggly from
Yeah,
what I've seen so far. That's why it wasn't my watch of the week because I didn't fully watch it. So I didn't want to be like, oh,
yeah.
and then finish it and be like, whoa, this is the best piece of cinematic film I've ever seen. Um, but yeah, where I stand right now is it's good. It's a good rom-com, but it just felt so overhyped to me, where I was like, I don't get it, other than the fact that Glenn Powell is so attractive.
It was really funny because leading up to that release, like when we first started seeing trailers for it in the theater, I protested that movie I was like, I'm not seeing this. This looks absolutely stupid. Like I don't know why I hated it so much, but I was just like, this cannot be good. And then I ended up going with my sister because she wanted to go and my mom wouldn't go with her because she didn't want to see it either. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll go with you because I knew people who were going and they were like, oh, it's good. And I was like, okay, fine. And then we left, and I was like, you know what? That was way better than I was giving it credit for based on like the first trailers. And then I actually ended up going to see it with her again because she wanted to go see it again. And I was like, sure. So I thought it was good, but I'm glad I actually did end up going to see it. So those are our weekly watches. Um, so go see The Purge is on, I forget where I watched it, but Murder by Numbers on Netflix and
The Nice Guys
The Nice
and
Guys.
Anyone But You.
All right, well, it's almost the end of the episode. So, as we do every week, we'll end it with our upcoming releases. So, Gracie, do you want to start off something's coming in theaters on June 21st, tomorrow, on Friday?
I am so excited for this one. The Bike Riders is coming out on the 21st in theaters. Nicole and I are very big advocates for this one because who would not want to see Austin Butler and Tom Hardy riding motorcycles and in leather jackets?
Yeah. I was at work the other day and the ad came on the TV, and two of the regulars at my restaurant, they were sitting there and they were like, "Oh, what's that?" Like they were like looking at it. They're like, "What is that?" That like I'm like, "That is Bike Riders." And then the Austin Butler came on the screen and they're like, "Oh." They're like, "Huh." And I was like, "Oh." I was like,
Oh.
we had very different reactions.
But on the flip side, there's also a horror movie coming that Nicole is excited about.
I'm just confused. So there's a new Exorcism movie and Russell Crowe is the star. I'm just confused because there was a new Exorcism movie last year, and then there's the next two coming out as well within the next few years for this trilogy that they're doing. So it doesn't seem that this Exorcism movie is connected to the actual like exorcism universe of all the past exorcisms. Russell Crowe plays a struggling filmmaker, and his daughter's worried that he's falling into old, dangerous habits, or she doesn't know if it's actually spirits. So yeah, that comes out in theaters tomorrow. Uh, Russell Crowe, love Russell Crowe. So we'll see.
Yeah. And also on the 21st, lots of releases on the 21st.
Tons of releases this week.
Thelma is coming out. I honestly don't know much about this film. I know Nicole is way more excited than I am just because I haven't had time to fully like look into it.
Yeah, so June Squibb is Thelma in the movie. She's a star. It also has Richard Roundtree, Fred Heshinger, Parker Rosie, and Malcolm McDowell. So Thelma, the main character of the film, she's 93 years old and she's scammed over the phone. The scammer's pretending to be her grandson, who's Fred Heshinger, and they scam her into mailing them a large sum of money when she thinks he's in trouble. So the movie revolves around her trying to get back at the scammers and having her family and friends kind of unite and help her to get the money back, or at least to set revenge on whoever the scammer is. So it actually looks really funny. I love June Squibb. She's actually also in the new Inside Out movie, Inside Out 2. So she's been busy. Miss June has been busy. But this definitely looks like a funny little comedy. So if you're into that kind of movie, this is definitely a great one to go and see with friends or family. I think in the trailer they even say to bring your grandma. So even bring your grandma to the theater this weekend to see Thelma. We also have another Canadian icon coming to Prime Video on June 25th, the new documentary I Am Celine Dion on Prime Video. I know there's a few screenings happening at the TIFF Bell Lightbox Theatre in Toronto as well before, so if you're interested, you can get tickets for events like that, but it does come to Prime Video on the 25th, and it's a documentary, obviously, just about Celine Dion, and she's speaking up for the first time about her diagnosis with stiff person syndrome. So she talks a lot about that and her struggle with that and her journey. So it'll be interesting to hear from her, what's been going on with her, but yeah.
And lastly, in music news, Gracie Abrams is releasing her album, The Secret of Us, on the 21st. And a lot of people are excited for this, not only because it's Gracie Abrams, but because she has a feature with Taylor Swift on the album. So we're excited to see what that holds.
Absolutely. June 21st is a big day.
It is for music and movies.
Well, that is all we have for this week. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Jordan earlier in the episode and then as well all of our news this week.
Well, thank you for tuning in to episode 7 of As Seen on Screen. I'm Gracie.
And I'm Nicole, and you can find As Seen on Screen anywhere you get your podcasts on Spotify and YouTube.
We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.